Look at me, making the jump from Instagram to YouTube. Got new setup and a mic and testing a whole new system out here. So we're just gonna cross our fingers and hope for the best. Let's do this. Welcome everyone. My name is Gary. This is GaryKnitsAndRides, a Craftivism podcast. I am a knitter and a crocheter. I am also a cyclist on AIDS Lifecycle, which is a 545-mile, 7-day ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles, which raises money for the San Francisco AIDS Foundation and the Los Angeles LGBT Center. This is the 5th year that I will be doing the ride. And as part of my fundraising last year, I started the End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs as a way to raise a little extra money. This year, I have also started D-Stash for Good, which is an online fiber auction to help raise money for AIDS Lifecycle as well. We're going to talk about all of that, those events coming up, but I wanted to welcome you to my little corner of YouTube at the intersection of making things and trying to make the world a better place. You can find me on Instagram at GaryKnitsAndRides with underscores between each of those words. And on Ravelry, I'm GaryKnitsAndRides because Ravelry has a character limit that won't let me use my Instagram name. Also on Ravelry, we have a group for the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. But I'm hoping to continue to do some Instagram live stuff, but move most of my stuff over here to YouTube. Speaking with some people who were participants in the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs last year, it seemed like YouTube might be a little more accessible to everyone. I'm trying to figure out what the balance of the two platforms is gonna be. So we'll just kind of have to play it by ear. But welcome. If you could like and subscribe, that would really help me to grow this platform and start to let people know that I'm doing this. Anyway, I thought I would talk first about what has been going on the last couple of weeks. So we announced the second season of the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. We will be doing the fall season coming up right after Labor Day. We will also be doing a winter season and then spring and Pride, because that Pride coincides with the actual bike ride, which happens early in June every year. And so last year we did 4 events. They were really fun and really successful. I was able to raise an additional $8,000 for my AIDS Lifecycle fundraising through the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs and the just general donations that came through as a result of people participating in those. So I thought that was fantastic, and I'm hoping to replicate that and maybe build on that again this year. I should have mentioned up front that when I started the ride 5 years ago, my long-term goal was to raise $200,000 for these organizations. I'm a little bit under halfway there. I thought it was going to take me 10 or 11 years. It looks like it's maybe going to take me 8 years, so that's fantastic. And my goal this year is to raise $32,000. I raised $31,000 last year, which was a big step above what my goal was, and that's all due to the community and the Knitalongs, the Crochetalongs that we did last year. So hoping to replicate that or build on that this year. We are going to do 4 events again. Each one will have a knitting component and a crochet component. There may be some surprises thrown in along the way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how they work and what we've got planned for this first event in the fall, which again will kick off after Labor Day. It's going to run from September 12th through November 12th. So the idea was, I always like to give 2 months for the events so that they're a little more relaxed. People don't feel like they're rushing to complete projects. Even though the giveaways and prizes that we do are more geared toward FOs rather than, are more geared to WIPs rather than FOs, because I like to reward participation more than completion. But I thought 2 months gives people a nice relaxed period of time to work on projects. And also I wanted to wrap things up before the holiday season started to get going for people. So we announced the fall events and designers and dyers last week. Each event will have a designer for a crochet pattern, a designer for a knit pattern, and then we pair up dyers with those designers to put together yarn kits. And typically portions of both pattern sales and yarn kit sales are donated to AIDS Lifecycle. Each one runs a little differently. I've said from the beginning, my goal with these Knitalongs and Crochetalongs is, number one, to have fun. Number two, to get these indie dyers and designers paid. And then any extra money we can raise on top of it is sort of gravy. So I try to work with each designer and dyer for whatever's best for their business and how we work the donations. I found what seems to work best is for them to just increase their prices by the amount of the donation, and then that allows the participants to essentially fund the donation rather than any of it coming out of the designer or dyer's pockets. So let's talk about knitting first. So the Knitalong this fall, I'm very excited. Two of my favorite people in this business raised their hand and said they were interested in putting together a project. So on the design side, we have Fatimah Hinds, who you all may know from Instagram as Disturbing the Fleece. And she has put together a gorgeous cowl and hat set. It's called the It's Winter Somewhere hat and cowl set. It's a pre-existing pattern of hers, but she's bundled them together for the Knitalong and then put some special pricing on it. So here's a picture here of the hat and cowl, and I'll cycle through a couple of different pictures. As you can see, it is a beautiful braided design. They're two different cabled. It is two different cables. One's more of a braid, the other is more of an hourglass, and those motifs are then repeated again on the cowl, and it looks like it's a fairly generously sized cowl. I should say about the pattern that it is DK weight. It takes a skein of DK to make the hat and 2 skeins for the cowl. Now, I actually, before we announced, this is going to focus. I worked up the hat. I have not yet done the cowl. Is it gonna? Oh, there we go. I really, really had fun doing it. So I guess I have to hide my eyes. There we go. And this is in the yarn that the dyer has put together for this kit. So you can see the two motifs. It comes together in a really nice, oh my gosh, crown decreases up at the top. And I think it looks great. So the designer that we teamed up with is Ross from Twisted Ambitions Yarn. And hopefully you know Ross. He puts out some amazing yarn. I think both Fatimah and Ross, I think were a perfect pairing because I think both of them are sort of known for their bold use of colors. And it was interesting because we were putting, when we came up with the idea to do this hat and cowl set with the cables, one of the things Fatimah is very adamant about is that you should use, variegated yarns and speckled yarns and things like that in doing cables, which for me, as I was learning to knit, seemed like one of those no rules that, you don't want to break. You want solid colors because then you can see the textures of the cables better. But as you can see in this, this is one of my lessons I'm going to have to learn is how to do this a little bit better. But as you can see, this is a tonal with some pretty good variation in the yarn, and I think that variation really makes the cables pop. So Ross from Twisted Ambition has put together 3 colorways for the hat and cowl set. I'm going to pop a picture up here of the 3 colorways. I have 2 of them to show you in person, but I don't have the 3rd. So the teal blue or the turquoise blue that you see is this. This is Caribbean, and this is a little less, I mean, there is some variation in it, but it's a little less tonal than the orange that I was showing before. Then there's the pink color that you see, which is Flamingo. It is speckled, so it's a light pink with darker pink speckles on it. And then finally the orange, which I used, which is Sedona, and has a little more variegation than the Caribbean color. All 3 are absolutely beautiful. I think they're going to work up well. I cannot wait to see the Flamingo. I know several people have already ordered that and started to get it. It looks great in person, and I'm really excited to see how that works up in the cables. So that is it. So the It's Winter Somewhere hat and cowl set, the 3 yarn kits from Twisted Ambitions Yarn. All of them are available now. So let me talk about the pattern for a second. The patterns are $11 a piece, but for the Knitalong, Fatimah has bundled them up. So if you buy them together, you can buy both of them for $20. And then $4 of each of the patterns or $7 of the bundle will get donated to AIDS Lifecycle. And I believe that Fatimah is then adding on $1 on top of that as her personal donation to AIDS Lifecycle. The yarn from Ross is available for pre-order now. And in fact, the sooner the better, just so I like to get these dyers. And this is one of the reasons why we launched so far in advance of the cast on, is to give the dyers enough time to get the yarn dyed up for the kits and get them delivered to folks for cast on. So again, DK weight, 1 skein for the hat, 2 skeins for the cowl. The skeins of yarn are $29.90 a piece. It's on his Wicked DK base, which is a generous put up. It's 115 grams, 250 yards. It's 100% superwash merino. So get your yarn kits ordered as soon as possible. And then definitely you want to buy the pattern, especially if you're buying both of them, ahead of cast on day. Again, cast on day is September 12th. The discount pricing of both of those patterns together for $20 is going to go away on cast on day. So you want to get that ordered as well, or sooner rather than later. The bundle, if you put them both in your cart in Ravelry, it automatically takes the discount off. So that is, I think, everything on the Knitalong. Ross from Twisted Ambitions Yarn is also matching Fatimah's donation to AIDS Lifecycle. So that's fantastic. So every pattern purchase or yarn purchase that you make helps to support my fundraising. I should say up front, and I should have mentioned this in the beginning, we highly encourage stash diving. So if you have things in your stash that are going to work for this pattern, by all means, please feel free to use that. You're welcome to be a participant in the Knitalong, using your yarn without having to purchase one of the kits. Likewise, if you've already purchased this pattern, as I mentioned, it's a pre-existing pattern from Fatimah. If you've already purchased this pattern, you are more than welcome to join us in the Knitalong. If the spirit moves you, and you'd like to make a small donation to my fundraising, there'll be links in the show notes for both the fundraising page, and then I've set up a coffee account for kind of small dollar donations and for other things which we'll talk about in a minute. But either one of those places, if the spirit moves you, make a donation. But I'm not, going to police these things, and I'm happy to have as many people join us as possible. So I think that is it on the Knitalong side of things. For the Crochetalong, we have a very pretty shawl wrap that has been designed by Leigh Ann Parente. It is part of a collection that will be coming out on September the 8th that's called the Sun and Fog Collection. It's, I think, a semi-annual collection of patterns by Northern California designers that's been happening for the past few years. So Leigh Ann's pattern is going to be in that collection on Ravelry. The theme this year, they have a theme every issue, is leaves. And so her wrap, which is called the Sweet Shadow Wrap, and I'll post a picture of it up here, was designed to sort of mimic, you'll see there's points on it, the shape of a maple leaf. And it is designed as a 5-color fade in fingering weight held double. I believe it is worked on a 6mm J hook, and so you use those 5 colors together and then fade across the pattern. It's written in 2 sizes, so the full size that you're seeing in the picture takes 2,000 yards of yarn, so all of the 5 skeins. There's also a smaller size which only takes 1,500 yards of yarn in fingering weight, and then it can also be done in DK. I believe 4 skeins of DK weight would work. You're not going to get that fade, but you could do it as a color block or even as a solid color, because I think the shape's so interesting that it, in a solid color, I think it would look fantastic as well. So it's coming out on, as I mentioned, the collection's coming out on the 8th. We can't release the pattern until the collection comes out. So it will also drop on the 8th as an individual pattern on Ravelry. And again, links to all of the patterns and everything will be in the show notes. Obviously, I can't link to this pattern because it's not out yet, but I will go back and update that after the fact. And Leigh Ann is donating 100% of the proceeds. The individual pattern is going to go for $650. She's donating 100% of the proceeds for that first weekend. So from September the 8th to September 11th, she's donating 100% to AIDS Lifecycle. So you definitely want to get the pattern that first weekend to maximize the donation. I do want to encourage you, if you are interested in supporting these other indie designers in the Sun and Fog collection, please buy the pattern that way. It won't actually help me in the fundraising, but I feel very strongly that we should all be supporting indie designers when we can. So feel free to buy Leigh Ann's pattern by buying the collection. And then again, if the spirit moves you and you feel like making a small donation to the fundraising directly, that would be fantastic. But I'm happy just to have you participating however you can, and I think it's a great thing to do to support those indie designers. So on the yarn side, and you have seen in the picture there, because the yarn was in the front of it, a kit that Eva from Seismic Yarn has put together specifically to support AIDS Lifecycle. So again, 5 skeins of fingering weight yarn. When Leigh Ann was talking about picking out the colors with Eva on this, she kind of wanted to mimic kind of a dusk until dawn. So you'll see that it has that starts in the, depending on which end, if you're starting in, but if you're going from dusk to dawn, sort of that dark purple, and then into sort of more rose, and then finally into gold and yellow. So the 5 colors in the official AIDS Lifecycle kit are citrine, daybreak, Mother Must Go Now, and I have a funny story about that in a second, Dracula's Cape, and dark tanzanite. So those are the 5 colors. The yarn is $30 per skein, so the kit is $150 in total. It is on Eva's butter fingering base, which I believe is 8515. Don't quote me on that, but it'll be in the details down below. I forgot to make a note of it today. And Eva is donating 10% of all of the yarn kit sales to AIDS Lifecycle. But as they say in infomercials, wait, there's more. One of the colors, Mother Must Go Now, is a special color that she designed specifically for this kit. And she is including that in her Compassion collection. It's a group of yarn that she has designated as charity fundraising yarns for the life of the colorways. So Mother Must Go Now, in addition to being in this kit, for the life of that colorway, Eva is going to donate 20% of the sales proceeds to AIDS Lifecycle through my fundraising portal. So that's another $3 for the kit sales. So $18 in total goes to AIDS Lifecycle. But wait, there's more. Daybreak, and I think that's the name of the color, the second one after citrine, is also part of her compassion collection, has been for a while, and that is a fundraising yarn for the Trevor Project, which, if you don't know, the Trevor Project does advocacy work supporting LGBT youth and working specifically with suicide prevention. So $6 of the kit price is going to be donated to Trevor Project, because she's just layering on the donation for AIDS Lifecycle on top of that. So you purchase a kit, $18 of it goes to AIDS Lifecycle, an additional $6 of it goes to Trevor Project. So it is like a win-win-win situation for everyone involved. So I said there was a funny story about the Mother Must Go, and if you saw the initial live that I did with Eva, you've already heard this story. But when she was a very little girl, her first day of pre-K at a Catholic pre-K kindergarten, she was not wanting her mother to go, and her mother was sticking around. And finally, one of the nuns had reached her point of exasperation and got up into Eva's face and said, "Mother must go now." And I guess Eva responded, "No, she doesn't have to," or something along those lines. But it sort of stuck in her memory. Come a few years later, this nun, Sister Ramona, fell on a school field trip and broke her hip and needed a blood transfusion. And this was back in the early to mid 80s, and contracted HIV/AIDS through that blood transfusion, and was one of the very early cases in San Francisco. She ultimately died from the disease, and I believe was probably the first Catholic nun to die from AIDS. So it was kind of a big news story at the time. So when Eva came up with the color and the name, she thought it was a nice, not only sort of fun story from her childhood about that interaction with the nun, but also tied in nicely with the fundraising goals and the organization, San Francisco AIDS Foundation, that was so instrumental in those early years of the epidemic in San Francisco. So Mother Must Go is, as I mentioned, in the Compassion collection. And so for the life of the colorway at Seismic Yarn, 20% of the proceeds are going to go to AIDS Lifecycle. So I'm encouraging you all to, in addition to buying the kit and working on Leigh Ann's gorgeous sweet shadow wrap, to figure out a giant project like a blanket or a sweater for Mother Must Go Now, and buy a bunch of that as well. So to continue my fundraising for many more years. So when we get to the end of my AIDS Lifecycle career, we'll figure out a way for Eva to continue those donations to support someone else's AIDS Lifecycle fundraising. So in addition to that AIDS Lifecycle kit, Eva got super inspired and curated a bunch of different other kits that you could use for the sweet shadow wrap. And so I will pop some pictures up here, but there is the party pack, the Skip the Orange, so it's basically the blues and purples of the color range with a few other blended colors thrown in there. Then there's one that is purple, blue, and green. And then finally there's one that kind of takes more of a rainbow approach, and it's called A Little Bit Softer Now. So it has a little more kind of a soft rainbow color. If you were with me on the Pride Knitalongs and Crochetalongs this last year, we did several rainbow themed projects, and it kind of reminds me of one that would be in that grouping. So all of those are currently available at Seismic Yarn. Again, please help Eva plan out her dye schedule and get the kits ordered sooner rather than later. You really probably only have a few more days. I'm recording this on Saturday the 20th to post on the 21st. So you really, by the middle of next week, it's probably as long, you want to get them in by then to ensure that you have the yarn for cast on. But again, I make the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs 2 months long, so we don't feel this rush pressure. So if you don't get your yarn by cast on day, do not panic. You're still going to be able to get it finished. Leigh Ann, in our conversations on Instagram, if you saw that, said it worked out very, very quickly. And she may be super fast at crochet, but she got the yarn on a Friday once we had decided on colors. And I think by the following Friday, she was done with it. Now, it's her pattern. She's made it several times, so there's probably zero learning curve for her to do it. But she has said, especially since you're holding those yarns double, that it is a pretty quick project. So that's it on the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. One of the things that came up as I was planning this year. So if you were with me last year when we first kicked off the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, we started things off with a cowl, gorgeous cowl from Louis Boria, Brooklyn Boy Knits, called the Respira scarf. And we did it in 2 colorways, but we didn't start until, I want to say it was November, and we kind of ran it through the holidays. And I just know things get crazy for folks during the holidays, and I didn't want to add any additional pressure, so we tried to move it back a couple of months so that we could end it before, in this first one before Thanksgiving. The problem with that is, as I'm sure many of you realize, fall is very heavy Knitalong and Crochetalong season. You've got the Stephen West Mystery Knitalong, which is going to be kicking off here soon. Hohi Locatelli does her fall Knitalong. I know the Needles of the Ready guys have teamed up with Michael at Piece for Piece Crafting to do a broad West Knits Knitalong that's currently running. Radical Threads and Steph Made That are doing their Lacy Crochetalong, which I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. And that's just the ones that I know off the top of my head, in addition to the people who are frantically working on Rhinebeck sweaters to get ready for New York Sheep and Wool. So I realized that adding another Crochetalong and Knitalong to the mix is probably too much for some people. You may also not be a hat and cowl person if you're a knitter, or whatever. You may have too many projects on your plate, but you still may want to help with my fundraising and join in the community and the fun that we have with this Knit Along with the giveaways and the Zoom calls and all that stuff. So for this one, I'm trying something new, which is adding something I'm calling the wildcard division. It is designed for folks who either may want to make one of these projects but don't have the bandwidth or time to do it right now, and so they want to do it at a later date, or folks that aren't interested in either of these patterns but want to join the community and work on something else at the same time. So the way it's going to work is if you want to join the wildcard division, which will be its own bucket in terms of giveaways, and we're going to talk about giveaways here in a second, you can buy any of the patterns in the fall Knit Along and Crochet Along. So either buy the hat pattern, the cowl pattern, both, or the shawl pattern when it comes out. DM me those receipts, because I this is one time where I am going to try to keep track of things. And then knit whatever you like. Also, another way you can enter is to order any of the yarn for the fall Knit Along Crochet Along project. So either order yarn from Ross in one of those 3 colorways, order yarn from Eva in the AIDS Lifecycle colorway, or even order some of the Mother Must Go Now. So basically any of the ways that donations get added to the AIDS Lifecycle, if you do any of those things and DM me the receipt, then we'll get you entered into the wildcard division. Finally, if you don't want the patterns, you don't feel like you're going to make them, or you don't need any more yarn, you can go to my Ko-fi page and buy a wildcard ticket. So those are $12. You buy the ticket and then you are good to go. You can knit on whatever you want and whatever yarn you want. Post pictures using either the Knit Along or the Crochet Along hashtag. Again, Those hashtags will be listed in the show notes. And that's how you're going to get entered into the giveaways. So there's several ways to play along if you want to be part of this process, but you have other projects that are taking up your time, and you want to be working on those this fall, but still want to participate. So that's the wildcard division. I think that is it on that. But I did mention that it is going to be a separate bucket of giveaways. So I thought I'd spend a second here to talk about how giveaways work for the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. Essentially, there are 5 rounds, a minimum of 5 rounds in each Knitalong and Crochetalong. There are prizes for knitters and crocheters, and in this case, wildcard folks. We do a cast-on giveaway. We do a halftime giveaway. There is a final whip giveaway, an FO giveaway, and then a grand prize. The grand prize is across all 3 categories, but each of the other ones, there are 4 separate prizes for each of those points in time. Again, I try to reward whips more than FOs because I want I want people to be participating and not be too focused on like having to get something completed. On the FOs, if you do finish an object, I'm going to keep a running tally of folks who have completed projects for the whole season. And at the very end of the season, there will be a season grand prize, which anyone who completes any of the events throughout the season will be eligible for. So last year it tends to be a pretty good prize. Last year it was a Lola Bean and Hohi collab bag that Adela from Lola Bean Yarn Company had donated as a giveaway prize. So we tend to have some pretty good prizes, the way to enter is to just use the hashtag. So the hashtags again will be below, but it's basically hashtag End AIDS KAL Fall 22 and hashtag End AIDS KAL Fall 22. And you'll use those if you're a wildcard player, whether you're knitting or crocheting, you'll just do it in those buckets, and I'll know that you're a wildcard player because you're not working on the project that the rest of us are working on. So that's it on giveaways. I should mention where the giveaways come from. There are basically 2 categories. One I call heart mail, and that is where vendors or makers have sent me donated items to give away as prizes in the Crochetalongs and the Knitalongs. If you are a maker, a dyer, a notions maker, bag maker, whatever, and you're interested, please hit me up. I love to be able to get things and show them off and talk about it and then give them away to people. The other bucket is what I call booty stash, which are things that I've picked up along the way. Typically, I take good advantage of sales that folks have and buy some extra yarn and buy some bags and notions and things like that, and then I put the prizes together from that. So it's a mix. I try to be pretty clear when I get donated items in. I try to show them when I get them in, and then show them again when I give them away, so folks know who the people who have been generous to donate items are, and the rest are things that I've purchased along the way. So that's it on giveaways and knit along and crochet along, and we're half an hour in, and I'm trying to keep these to about 45 minutes. I figured today might go a little bit long just because this is new for folks. Maybe it's the first time you're being introduced to the Knitalongs and the Crochetalongs and me. But I'll try to keep these generally relatively short unless I have special guests, because I'm hoping over time I can interview some of the dyers and designers that are working on the Crochetalongs and Knitalongs. So the other thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned up top, that was a new fundraising idea for me this year, and it's just underway, and that is D-Stash for Good. So that is a separate Instagram account, not my GaryKnitsAndRides account. And in that account, I host periodic fiber auctions. There is one running right now. It started last Monday. It is going to run through the 26th of this month at 5 p.m. Pacific, at which point it'll close down. This was really kind of a test run. I have about 70 listings up there. It's all yarn, and there's some pom-poms. But it's basically all yarn, and it's a wide range from, some red heart all the way up to super fancy hand-dyed indie dyer yarn. And at least 50% of the proceeds of everything in the auction is going to be donated to AIDS Lifecycle. You can see in each of the listings how much the seller is going to be donating, and all the information about whether shipping is included, et cetera, are in each of the listings. There's an FAQ. I will also link to it below. That's in the bio of the D-Stash for Good account that goes through all the logistics of how the bidding works and how the transaction will be settled at the end of the day. Everything's done directly between the buyers and sellers. So seems to be working really well. I will say, as I said, we've got about 70 things listed, from single skeins all the way up to a massive 10 skein Lola Bean Yarn Co. Pack. And I think so far, I checked a couple of days and tried to do a rough calculation. We're over $1,100 in this first auction. So that is fantastic. It's more than kind of I expected to do in the first time, because I had really no idea how excited people would be to be listing their yarn and also to bidding on it. So I'm really pleased. I hope people are having fun with it. At the end of this first auction, I'll probably do a little survey of folks just to see how often you want to see these happen, how big you want them to be in terms of the number of listings. I was unsure how easy it was going to be to get the listings up there after the information came in from people, but it was pretty quick. I was able to get those 70 up in a couple hours on a weekend. So that made me feel good that we could probably scale it up a little bit going forward. My initial plan was to do, maybe 3 or 4 of these, maybe in between Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, have an auction. But if people are really into it, we could probably do it more frequently. So if you have stash that needs a new loving home, start gathering that together, because probably in a month or so we'll do another one of these things. In the meantime, go over and check it out. There's still a week to go in the auction. I think most everything is still below retail price, which makes sense. So there's a couple of items that don't even have a bid yet, so you can probably pick up some real bargains there. And there's some really great great stuff over there. So go check it out at D-Stash for Good. And I think that's all the doing good fundraising stuff that I had to talk about on this first episode. So I thought we would get into a little bit about making and what I've been working on, what is coming up in my queue. And I actually have one FO, which is sitting over here out of reach. So I'm going to bend forward and grab that and talk about that first. So I just finished today. This is a hat. Also Fatimah, Disturbing the Fleeces design. It is called the Not So Tart hat. And she did an along on this a couple of months ago with Adela Lola Bean. Had this bright lemon tart color that they were doing. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I was looking for a project and had started one that I'm going to show you in a minute. And then a friend of mine was coming through chemo and radiation after a brain tumor and brain cancer, and reached out. And I'd been asking her if there was anything I could that we could do for her. And she finally was like, yes, could you make me a couple of hats, because I've started to lose some hair. So she didn't have her measurement, but because it's Southern California, which is where I'm located, fingering weight was really the only viable option. Although someone's mentioned that I shouldn't underestimate how cold your head can get when you've lost some hair due to chemo and radiation. So I'd been wanting to make this hat, and I had this extra. This is Madeline Tosh, vintage Tosh, and I think the color is paper. And I had some of this left over from another project, and so it worked up really quickly. I love how it looks. It's so like simple, but just looks really sort of classy, I think, in with these sort of panels of twisted rib and then the panels of stockinette. And it's a really fun pattern. It worked up really quickly. I will say I have not done a lot of twisted rib, so the twisted rib brim was a little slower than my usual one by one rib, but once you get up into the body of it and you start having these panels with stockinette, it moves really quickly. So this was done in just a few days. So I'm going to take this over to her tomorrow. see how the fit is, see how she feels about the the shape and the length of it. She's an older woman. I don't expect slouchy is kind of her vibe, but if she does want it a little taller, I'm going to make her a couple. She asked for 2, and I'm going to make her at least 2. And I'll probably try a different pattern next time just to give her a little bit of variety. In fact, I have, we'll talk about future whips, but I wound up, this is a one-of-a-kind from Treehouse Knits. I don't know what. I've got to figure out this focusing issue. It's my eyes, my face, right? So this is Treehouse Knits, and then I had some leftover yarn from this shawl behind me, this Triangle Parade from Stephen West. This is some yarn from Knitting Tree LA that Annette, the owner of Knitting Tree LA, had dyed up and put in a kit for the Stephen West shawl at the beginning of the pandemic, and so I have some of that. So I thought those two went well together, and I'm thinking of either a sockhead slouch, which I've never made, but which everyone seems to really love, and maybe do a stripe or maybe do the brim in a different color. There's another hat called the swirl hat, which I'll post a picture of. I keep pointing that way, maybe this way. And which I've made several times as a baby hat, but it has a little bit of open work on it. Again, I'm worried about it being too hot, but it also has a nice pattern to it. So I haven't quite decided which one of those I'm going to do, but I will definitely make another hat once I get the fit issues figured out with her. So the project that got put on the back burner when I picked up the hat was the Pure Joy by Joji Locatelli, which I'm making for myself. It is living in my beautiful sister bag, which has a there it is, a pin oh my gosh. So we're learning all about, okay, there we go. A pin that a fellow AIDS Lifecycleist had made and sold last year as part of his fundraising, and so I got one of those. But yeah, this is my beautiful sister camo bag that I got at the Bertie Parker studio, open studio last year. But here is my Pure Joy from Joji Locatelli. Again, this is a pattern that a lot of people, I know Kevin and Ray, or Kevin, has made several of these from Needles at the Ready. And I am using 2 of the Treehouse Knits Cocoa Collection colors. So the variegated is Marigold Bridge, and then the blue is, so here I'll pull them both out if they are tied up on something. The blue is the slubby, the slub base in its Underworld. So that's Marigold Bridge and Underworld from the Cocoa Collection from Treehouse Knits. If you've been following me for a while on Instagram, you know I was obsessed with that collection. And anytime she re-released it, I just bought more of it. And speaking of Treehouse Knits, who I think is one of the best dyers out there, her Stranger Thing collection is coming out in a couple weeks and it looks fantastic. So if you don't follow Lauren at Treehouse Knits, definitely give her stuff a look because it's fantastic. But I'm really excited. I mean, I've had to take a little bit of a break on this with the hat, but it's worked out pretty quickly so far. I'm in my kicking off my third wedge, and I'm hoping I can finish this before I go on vacation in the middle of September. We may have a little bit cooler weather, and so maybe this would be a nice thing to take, even just on the airplanes where it tends to get cold, to have just a little scarf. It's not very big. The Pure Joy, if you know it, it's a fairly small crescent-shaped wrap. So that is currently on hold, but hopefully next week, if I can finish the second hat this week, I'll be able to pick that back up again. The other thing that I've had to put on hold for a while now, which I'm excited to be getting back to, is actually the Crochetalong project for the June KAL of season 1. So it is the Ellie Rue shawl And I did mine in the Rainbow Dust Kit that was put together by Caitlin from Porter Wool Co. So there is a, I'm gonna get this. There's a off-white which has all these fantastic, I call them rainbow sherbet sprinkles in it, and you can kind of see why this may have been on hold, because this is all I have left of that main color. And then there were minis in all of these, all the sort of rainbow, sort of pastel-y neon rainbows, neon colors. Yes, I didn't quite do my planning for the colors properly for the kit, but I just loved the way that alternating every single section between the variegated and then one of the colors and working through the rainbow looked. And so I had gotten this far, ran out of the main color, and decided that rather than either scrap it or change my scheme up, I was going to wait until Caitlin got back to work after summer break and have her dye some more of the, ordered another kit. And so then she is sending those to me. I think they're coming this week. So I will have lots of the neon solids left to do something with at a later date, but I'm getting 2 more skeins of the variegated, and I will wrap this up. If you're a crocheter and you have you're not familiar with the Ellie Rue, it's by Shelby Shays Stitches. She has a very active group on Facebook, and I consider myself bit of a novice on the crochet front, and so I was a little nervous about this, but it's a really fun and easy pattern. Definitely one of those just one more row patterns. I think there's maybe 9 different stitches in it, but I think if you know the basics of crochet, once you get through one of the repeats, it goes like that, and it works up really fast. It's really, really fun. I can't wait to finish it. I have we have at the end of the, or mid-September, right before we go on vacation, we're going to go see Duran Duran at the Hollywood Bowl, which is one of the things we love to do in the summer, is to go to the Hollywood Bowl. And I'm hoping it's a cool night, because sometimes in the hills in Hollywood, it's cool enough that you need like something, and I really think this would be awesome to wear to like Duran Duran 80s concert. So anyway, that's the Ellie Rue shawl by Shelby Shays Stitches, and that is the other FO that's kind of been on hold while I've waited for the yarn. Caitlin was kind of took the summer off because she has kids, and totally understand it, and there's no rush on that, so I'll be happy to get back to that when my yarn comes this week. And the other thing, which is a long-term FO, which you'll probably be sick of seeing after 2 or 3 episodes, is this monster faded throw that I'm making for a housewarming gift for some friends. They saw the yarn's pulling in front of it. They saw a version of this on someone's Etsy shop, and rather than buy it themselves, they asked me if I could make it, which is totally fine. It is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes, held double worsted, so it's very, very cozy. And then, marling the 2 of the colors together to create the fade. I'm almost through the blue and forest green, the navy blue and forest green fade. And then that means I just have navy and then a purple to do. And then there's a middle panel, and then it repeats. So it's going to be gigantic, and it's going to Miami, so I don't know that they'll ever be able to cozy up with it, but maybe it'll look good on the sofa. I think it's already like 6 feet long, and it's probably going to be almost that wide, so it may just end up being a big square, but I hope they love it. The only other thing to sort of talk about in terms of whips and future whips is, I mentioned earlier that one of the Crochetalong that was coming up that I knew about is the lacy cowl, designed by Steph Made That and partnering up with Radical Threads, to make his lacy shawl, which is a Tunisian crochet shawl. It's one of the things that I've been dying to make for a while, and I probably don't need to add another thing to my queue, but I'm going to go ahead and cast on for it anyway. So I think that's kicking off September 2nd. Don't quote me on that, but I'll link to all the info below. And I will pop a picture of the shawl up here. It's being co-hosted with Radical Threads magazine, and given the theme of this channel overall, which is craftivism and doing good in the community in addition to making things. If you haven't checked out one of the issues of Radical Threads, I highly recommend it. There's so much cool stuff in here between recipes and patterns and articles. They are, really trying to create something new in this industry, focused on BIPOC designers and dyers and writers and makers. So definitely worth checking out. They have online issues as well, so you can get all these without getting the hard copy. But anyway, they're teaming up with Steph. Steph made that for his lacy shawl knit Crochetalong, and so I am putting together. It's a 3-color pattern. I've put together this set. So the green is a magpie fiber singles called the colorway's Tactical. I used this in last year's mystery knit along, so I have enough of that left over. And then the mini is from I wrote it on Seismic yarn. I believe they're out of Europe. My sister gave me a yarn bouquet from them for the holidays this year. And then the variegated is Feisty Fibers out of Canada, and this is their Sprite colorway. So fingering weight shawl, Tunisian crochet, 3 colors. The variegated here, which I'm using Sprite for, is the main section, and then there's kind of color blocking on the ends. It's a very cool looking pattern. I took a Tunisian crochet class last year at Stitches West with Tony Lipsy and TL Yarn Crafts, and so I haven't really done, except for the work I did in that class, I haven't been able to take it and put it into a project, so I'm excited to work on that. So I'm going to cast on for that. We'll see how far I get. It gives me a couple weeks before my Knitalongs and Crochetalongs start, so I may have a chance to get pretty far into it. And then as I said, we're going on the first real vacation we've had since before the pandemic, and I have a couple of lengthy plane rides, so that I should be able to get a lot of work done there, and we'll take a couple of these projects along and see what we get made. I think that's it. Went a little long, but not too long. I really appreciate you taking time to learn more about what I'm doing in terms of not only my making, but the fundraising I'm currently doing for AIDS Lifecycle. As I mentioned, I'm planning to do the ride each year until I've raised $200,000 for the 2 organizations, knock on wood, health permitting, but so far so good. And then, my goal is to take this channel and to take the work that I've done on AIDS Lifecycle and continue to do events, whether it's the auction or Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, and raise money for other causes. And so how that'll all play out over the next few years, who knows? But that is the current plan, is once I've kind of raised the amount of money that I had set out to raise for AIDS Lifecycle, that I will take this and try to do something else with it and raise money for other good causes along the way. So I hope you will come back and join me again. My plan is to do this every couple of weeks. We'll figure out the balance between Instagram and YouTube. If you have any questions or anything, comments down below, I will happily try to answer anything I can. Please like and subscribe. If you've enjoyed this, please share it with your friends so we can try to build this this YouTube channel up quickly and get more people involved in the projects that we're working on. So with that, I will say goodbye and see you in a couple weeks. Thanks.